the opportunity to change and learn along with it.
Well, thanks so much, Shawn. As I said, certainly a PWI legend, an Achievement Award legend. Thanks for coming on, and look forward to finishing your book.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I have to ask you now is that you say Achievement Award? Now, is that one, like, when was that? That's one I didn't know about.
The Achievement Award is the year-end award. So we've got Match of the Year, that's Wrestler of the Year. Ironically, for all of those matches of the year, you were never PWI Wrestler of the Year.
I'll be darned. Very nice.
And I do think you have a PWI 500 #1. But yeah, it's so strange. I mean, I don't know what that says, is that for all those great matches, for some reason, you were never voted Wrestler of the Year. Strange.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm
See,
not
now you got...
wrestler. I'm just, I guess that's why I'm the sports entertainer guy. I guess I'm a better one of those than it.
So now
I am a wrestler.
You got something to come back for now, to finally get that
exactly.
Wrestler of the Year.
There you go.
All right, Shawn, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time.
You betcha. Thank you.
All right, take care. There you have it. Shawn Michaels talking to me about his PWI Match of the Year collection. I keep calling that because when you talk about 11 matches of the year, fully a quarter of all the matches of the year ever, it doesn't get more impressive than that. You can read more about some of those matches in his new book, Wrestling for My Life. Comes out today. Check it out on Amazon.com. And thanks again to Shawn and to Zondervan Books for setting that up. Louie, let's talk a bit about something you know a lot about, NXT. They got a big show on Wednesday, headlined by Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn. A feud that goes back years and years. I think it's pretty amazing. I mean, watching Raw last night, the little promo for that match, and it's just so bizarre that they're essentially acknowledging the history of what was basically an indie feud, but it really talks about how hot that feud was, that all these years later, they're building up a main event on the WWE Network off of the history between these two guys.
Their rivalry, their partnership is almost hard to define in terms of anything else. It's maybe the John Cena, Randy Orton of independent feuds. No matter the time, the place, whether they were loved or hated, friends or enemies, they've put on great matches and been, simultaneously best of friends and at each other's throats for over a decade. I mean, I can remember seeing the two of them go at it in the old ECW arena as part of a Combat Zone wrestling show in 2005. And here we are 10 years later, and they're main eventing an NXT special for the NXT Championship. It's a good indicator for the future of the business. That here's these guys that were toiling in anonymity a decade ago, and now here they are, one step below the biggest pinnacle in sports.
I'll ask both of you, what do you guys think of what's become of NXT? It's interesting that it's become sort of the new darling indie fed among a certain type of fan. I certainly get that feedback when I live tweet WWE pay-per-view, when I was doing that with the Royal Rumble, and a lot of the disappointment you hear in the main WWE product is always accompanied by, I'm going to go watch NXT instead. Why can't they be more like NXT? When at the end of the day, that's a WWE product as well. And I know some people think that that's a deliberate strategy, kind of co-opting that Ring of Honor type fan, bring them into the fold. Dan, is it a good strategy?
Yeah, it is. And I don't know whether it was a deliberate strategy or if it just kind of came this way, where they decided, okay, with NXT, we're going to let the guys stay a little bit more tied to their indie roots and kind of not really worry about having them do 3 or 4 minute TV matches and kind of get their characters over and do some of these other stuff, because the stuff may change if by the time they get called up to the main roster. So let's just let them work and get the matches out there and let it happen and it organically developed. Or it could be something where you look at say Coca-Cola. Now, I don't, if I'm going to grab between Coke or Pepsi, I'm going to grab a Pepsi, but I like ginger ale a lot, and I always go with Canada Dry, which is Coca-Cola brand. I don't like their signature flagship product, Coca-Cola, but I will drink their lesser-known ginger ale. Now, if WWE can do that, that's fantastic. That may finally be the way to cater to all the different types of wrestling fans that are out there. Have NXT maybe at some point have a complete Divas division where they do something a little bit more like Shimmer or Shine or NCW Femme Fatales and allow the girls to work a little bit more, in their own self-contained promotion. Now that they have the network, they have the ability to air that. So I think it's great that NXT does have its own distinct identity, and it could be the first step of many in finally providing a one-stop shop for all types of wrestling fans under the WWE umbrella.
Yeah, and part of that, having that distinct identity, over the last week they announced that they're taking NXT on the road. They're doing a couple shows in the Cleveland area. So again, it's becoming, it's sort of morphing from the new FCW, where it's strictly a Florida-based developmental territory, to kind of a separate brand. Lou, do you like the direction that it's going?
I love NXT. I agree with Dan. I think it's probably the best hour of WWE produced television per week, just because, like you said, it's a one-stop shop for all kinds of wrestling. And the other thing, you mentioned going on the road and they're expanding beyond what was FCW, but I think part of that charm is that when you watch NXT on TV, it is sort of like almost an earlier day ECW or a Ring of Honor or, one of those kind of, for lack of a better word, cult status promotions that they tape in the same building. A lot of the same fans come to those tapings. They get behind certain guys, they get against certain guys, and it kind of provides that atmosphere where you go to a WWE show, and sometimes John Cena is the most popular guy on the card, and sometimes he's the least popular guy on the card, and it changes from week to week. Whereas NXT, when Sami Zayn comes out, he is undoubtedly the number one fan favorite in the promotion. And when, Adrian Neville comes out, he's going to get a good reaction. And people hate Bull Dempsey and Kevin Owens and these guys. It gives it that kind of character where you know exactly what the score is, so you can appreciate the wrestling as much as you can appreciate the story behind it.
Yeah. Does NXT give either of you guys confidence of what WWE will look like if and when it's finally run by Triple H? He talked a bit about this in his interview with Steve Austin last week, essentially, making it clear to everyone that this is my vision for a wrestling company, and this is what I would do if I had full control. Do you buy that? Is the reality that you can't do a lot of what you're doing on NXT on the main product?
In my opinion, I think the big challenge with that is going to be that WWE is a publicly traded entity, and you're going to have to really re-educate the entire fan base if you want to kind of do an NXT-type product. Because for the past 10 years or so, what WWE has put out is really kind of not that. It's oversimplified. There's going to be a transitional period where to introduce something like what Triple H has done with NXT to mass audiences. And I think that they're going to lose some fans along the way. Now, in the long term, they'll probably gain those fans and more back. But when you're a publicly traded entity, if you go through a couple quarters where stocks are dropping because of a perceived change of the business model, it may be enough where, from a corporate standpoint, they have to go back and right the ship. So I don't think that you'd ever be able to enact those types of changes, all the way to the WWE product. You could have influences here and there, but I don't think you'll ever see NXT on the big stage per se.
Yeah. Lou, do you think that NXT is a glimpse of the future of WWE?
Yes and no. I agree a lot with Dan's take in that, you take a guy like Sami Zayn, who's the NXT champion, with his reputation and his past, if he showed up on Raw randomly one day, there might be a lot of people in the stands who know who he is without really being NXT fans. Oh my God, that's El Generico, or But you look at like the current tag team champions, Buddy Murphy and Wesley Blake. If they showed up on Raw, you'd be like, who are these guys?
Yeah.
So there's definitely a big fish in a small pond versus a small fish in a big pond mentality when it comes to bringing guys from NXT into WWE. It takes some time to build them, and you see where Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns are, but you also see where the Ascension is.
NXT as a brand gets the good rub from guys like Zayn and Kevin Owens, who I think almost everybody agree are great talents. But when you look at guys who are truly WWE developmental guys, all the way up to Roman Reigns and how he's being rejected, it makes you question if NXT is working as well as kind of the common thinking is.
Yeah, very possibly. I mean, you need to be well-rounded. I mean, the indies teach you to adapt. You can go to an indie show and anything can happen on an indie show. Rings can break. Anything can. You have to be able to just kind of go out there and okay, this is what I've got to do. You can go into an indie show and you're normally working as a babyface and they need a heel tonight, so the fans are going to be conditioned to pop for you. You need to kind of heel on them without having a turn and just go out and make it work. And you learn that on the indie circuit like they used to do in the territorial days. They're trying to teach some of those things in developmental, but I think that you need to learn from more than one teacher. Yeah. So I think if you go out on the indies and then go into developmental, it leads to a much more well-rounded wrestler rather than somebody who comes off of a CFL football field and because he's got famous relatives just gets put right into the farm team.
Dan said it best. It's learning from more than one teacher. It's, things don't always happen the way WWE want them to with the fans, for lack of a better way to put it. So guys like Zayn and Owen and these guys who came up through the indies, and even, the Finn Balor's and Hideo Itami's who've been working in very, very, very good promotions overseas, they know how to switch things up on the fly. They understand how to, go against whatever the plan may be to adjust to the crowd. They can make these in-match adjustments. They can kind of go heel one day if they need to and do this and that. Whereas the guys who come up through developmental, it's sometimes very cookie cutter is a criticism that a lot of people have of it. And, that's why Roman Reigns is kind of floundering a little bit, whereas Dean Ambrose has almost seamlessly transitioned from, loudmouth of the Shield to beloved fan favorite, and Seth Rollins has gone the opposite way from, kind of appreciated wrestler, architect of the Shield to the most hated guy in the company. His association with Triple H, of course, helps that. But it's definitely interesting to see, like you said, with the Ascension, how they're kind of just there at this point. And, they spent a lot of time in NXT. They dominated NXT, but now it's like now you have to replicate that on a bigger stage and take one step further. And they may not know how to do that.
Yeah. We will see. One thing is for sure is that these, I don't know what they are, monthly or every other month specials are typically some of the best wrestling you'll watch for a while. Going back to talking about match of the year, you wonder if potentially, whether it's this year or in a couple of years from now, a match of the year may come out of NXT. I mean, I think certainly work-wise, there are a lot of matches that merit consideration, and I think an NXT match placed this year, right? That wasn't
Cesaro versus Sami Zayn.
Yeah, and that was pretty much out of the gate their first year with real national exposure as part of the network. So, they're doing just great. I'll be definitely checking it out.
I wanted to make one last point about NXT, if I could, sure. Based on the Achievement Awards this year. If you look at them, the Rookie of the Year voting was the winner and all three
NXT
top
award.
runners-up, all NXT current wrestlers and divas. Even if you take out the Daniel Bryans and the Seth Rollins and the guys who came up through the indies that came through NXT, Rusev, Most Improved Wrestler of the Year, mostly an NXT alumni. You look at Woman of the Year, Paige, first runner-up. Yes, she's wrestled all over the world and in the U.S. too, but really, cut her teeth in NXT for a long time before coming up to Raw, and she was the first runner-up for Woman of the Year. The Wyatt family versus The Shield, was the first runner-up for Feud of the Year behind Rollins and Ambrose. There's a lot of buzz. Sami Zayn versus Cesaro being the match of the year second runner-up. There's a lot of buzz there.
And Bray Wyatt winning match of the year with John Cena.
That's correct.
Yeah.
There's a lot of buzz there, and it's a matter of now bringing it to the forefront. And like you said, Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens have wrestled each other many times. They're going to do it again Wednesday night. A year from now, we could be discussing that as the match of the year. You never know.
All right, guys, thanks so much for joining me. Hope to be back next week with another interview. Got a couple of people in the pipeline that I hope to get on the line with us. Louie, thank you again. Dan, thanks. Again, follow us on Twitter, official PWI, and check us out at pwi-online.com to subscribe, read a story, just generally check out what we're doing.
Yeah, and
thanks so much.
Al, what's the email address for the podcast?
Yes, thank you for the reminder. PWI Podcast at Outlook.com. Let us know what you think. If you got any recommendations, questions, definitely drop us a line. Thank you, guys.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.
See you next week.